Jessie leads the data stewardship team within HIE. With over 13 years' experience in the field of health data management, Jessie has become a leader in the field of data stewardship and governance, with vast experience in developing and implementing various stewardship-related frameworks, tools, and policies. Jessie has a passion for her work. She actively promotes and raises awareness for the importance of strong data stewardship programs. So thank you very much for joining us, Jessie. I will pass it over to you.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you for having me here. Just give me 1 second to make sure I can share my screen. If someone could confirm that I'm sharing the correct screen here.
That's perfect, Jessie. Yeah, thank you.
Fantastic. All right. Hi, everybody. I am Jessie Fracassi, and I'm here to talk to you guys about health data stewardship. So before we begin, I was hoping to just sort of get a little bit of a sense from you all about your level of familiarity with data stewardship. So I'm going to ask if you can all raise your sort of virtual hand if you feel like you understand what health data stewardship is. So if you feel that you could explain it to someone else, could you just real quick raise your virtual hand just to get a sense of where people are at? Awesome. So we're having... Awesome. Thanks, everybody. So hopefully I'm going to ask the same question kind of at the end, and hopefully even more of your hands will be popping up. So for today's session, I've kind of listed 4 main goals. So first would be to understand the critical importance of health data stewardship within that Canadian landscape. Second, it would be to sort of dive more into detail about the health data stewardship framework and really understand how its 9 foundational components are creating the right conditions for how data is accessed, used, and shared. Third is to learn a little bit more about some of the new tools and resources that are available to really help jurisdictions, organizations, and really any data users in operationalizing data stewardship. And finally, to learn more about how HIE is catalyzing stewardship through a new pan-Canadian governance model and how that's going to sort of help drive more coordinated, collaborative agenda for the country. So to kick things off, let's look at this image over here of a road network. So now imagine that these roads didn't connect. Imagine that on some roads, cars drive on the right, and on others, they drive on the left. On some, we allow only motorcycles and transport trucks. On others, we only allow cars, but not red ones. Some are publicly owned, so they're visible on a map. Others are more privately owned, and we can't see them on a map at all. Now imagine being a driver who has to navigate all of this. But of course, I'm not talking about roads. I'm talking about Canada's health data, about the rules of engagement around how it's organized, shared, and used for public benefit. I'm talking about health data stewardship and about building the foundation for responsible data use and really unlocking the power of data to get it to where it needs to go. So you might be asking yourselves, why does the data really need to go anywhere? Why is that something that's so important? Well, better access to data really benefits everyone in the health system. Patients and families benefit from timely access to their own information and from data being used safely to improve care and outcomes. Clinicians and health providers benefit from having the right information at the right time to support safe, effective decision-making. Health system leaders and public health organizations rely on that timely, high-quality data to manage the systems, respond to emerging risks, and to improve population health. Researchers and innovators also benefit from secure, responsible access to data that enables discovery, innovation, and learning health systems. Skip a slide there. So where does stewardship fit into all of this? So let's go back to that roads analogy for a minute. Why do our roads work? Well, we have consistent traffic rules that work for different kinds of vehicles, and we have ways to enforce those rules. We teach people how to drive and we license our drivers and really expect them to use the roads safely, no matter where in Canada they drive. We also have the rules and requirements relating to the vehicles that they drive to make sure that they are safe and fit to drive. And we have maps so that drivers know where they're going and how to get there. Today, the system enables Canadians to get where they're going and it allows consumer goods to move, but it also forms the blueprint for the future. We're not going to be reinventing the roads and the rules that govern them to accommodate self-driving cars. No, we're going to be expecting self-driving cars to use the existing roads with the existing rules. So data stewardship is similar. The focus is on the rules and the organizational and human factors that are needed to make the system work. It's focused on really building and aligning the foundational sort of rules of the road. This then allows for other important work, like the standards work that Shannon just spoke about, to act as that those sort of standardized lanes and that signage, ultimately enabling the vehicles to get to their destinations, bringing this whole system to life. Of course, it's not quite this easy, and Shannon alluded to a lot of this in her session as well. We actually have a very challenging health system. In fact, it's not just one health system, it's many different health systems, each with their own data, their own rules, their own tools and priorities. So this ultimately results in poorer outcomes and poorer quality of care for Canadians due to the fragmented data systems, the lost productivity, the slow innovation, and all the increased costs. So these underlying challenges are not technical challenges. They're related to the organizational, the governance, and those human factors. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to make access to data easier, and that includes access for researchers so Canadians don't miss out on innovations that will improve their healthcare and their health. But we also need to ensure that we do this safely and responsibly and really build and maintain that public trust in how data is shared and used. We need to improve efficiency through alignment and better coordination, both within and across jurisdictions. And we need to make sure that the jurisdictional needs and priorities are well supported. So for the past 2 years, HIE has been leading the charge on health data stewardship on behalf of patients, organizations, and jurisdictions across the country. We've been sort of setting that groundwork through the development of a framework and a governance model, both of which I'll give you more details on very soon. So now that we have that sort of groundwork in place, we've also received full support and endorsement from the Conference of Deputy Ministers of Health to continue to lead this important initiative on behalf of our partners across Canada. So now we're focused on advancing 4 key buckets of work to really support the implementation and the scaling of data stewardship across the country. So we're moving from that vision stage to that action stage. So the first sort of bucket there is around engagement. And this is really around ensuring that public trust and engagement is really embedded in the work through diverse stakeholder, patient, and community engagement. So this really ensures that how data is shared and used really reflects public values, the needs and expectations in a meaningful way. The goal is putting our stakeholders, including patients and communities, at the core of the decisions about sharing and use of health information. Next, we have the framework and resources. And this bucket of work is really around sort of driving that collective progress by providing common frameworks, standards, and tools, and supporting jurisdictions where they are and enabling effective and efficient decision-making and data operations. Next, we have governance and action plan. So this one is around coordinating a coherent pan-Canadian picture of the health system that provides trusted, comparable insights to guide policy, to fuel innovation, and address pressing challenges. Its focus is really on convening the provinces and territories and other interest holders to achieve that national agreement and advancement on issues of national importance. And lastly, we have our driver projects. So in addition to the framework and the governance model, which, like I said, lay that foundation for data stewardship, we're also focused on the practical applications. So we've been working with jurisdictions and other key partners to try and solve some of these collective challenges. So we have some initial driver projects to really start implementing the framework for specific use cases. So these driver projects will show real-world implementation and scaling of stewardship practices. So I want to highlight here that this is really a nationwide initiative. It's not about changing how HIE itself captures, uses, or shares health data. It's really about supporting a new era, one where trusted data stewardship fuels better care, smarter policy, and more equitable health outcomes for everyone in Canada. So in order to actually do this, it was imperative that we embarked on this journey collaboratively. So HIE spoke with a wide variety of health system stakeholders, including health data organizations, First Nations, Inuit, and Métis organizations, all the provinces and territories, patients, and the public. We also held monthly meetings with 2 external advisory groups. So one of them was focused on this sort of jurisdictional perspectives, and the other one was more of that subject matter expertise from across the country. We held over 230 stakeholder engagements. We conducted focus groups with patient partners, and we hosted lively and engaging forums with stakeholders across the country. So the outcome of all of these engagement sessions directly impacted all the deliverables of the initiative. Not only did it help to better inform our work, but it really helped to build that trust and ensure that the decisions that we were making were in tune with the needs and the expectations of the public and our stakeholders in order to provide that public benefit. So as this work all continues, so will our engagements, our consultations, and our commitment to keeping our stakeholders at the core of decisions about how data is accessed, shared, and used. So now let's talk a little bit more detail about the stewardship framework. So at this point, I think I've talked quite a bit about data stewardship, but I haven't actually defined it yet. So at its core, data stewardship is a responsibility to take care of data for public and individual benefit, both now and for the future. Health data stewardship advances the policies, the practices, the legislation, and the culture needed to improve data capture, sharing, and use. It really ensures that the data is handled in ways that are transparent, secure, interoperable, and respectful of Indigenous data sovereignty and patient rights, creating greater clarity, trust, and alignment across the system. Data stewardship also has both strategic and operational aspects to it. So the strategic aspects are focused more on changing the overall environment and the conditions for data use. And the operational aspects ensure that that day-to-day handling of the data is safe, ethical, and transparent. So to further support good data stewardship practices and to really ensure that we're putting people and communities at the core of decisions, we took what we heard in our many engagement sessions and developed these hallmarks of what good health data stewardship should look like. So essentially, these hallmarks have been defined to drive necessary changes in jurisdictions' policies, practice, legislation, and culture in regards to health data access, sharing, and use, and to really motivate clinicians, administrators, and innovators to be proactive in seeking new uses of data by taking these well-balanced risks in order to unlock the significant value of data for individuals, for healthcare providers, and for the economy. So the hallmarks themselves center around 4 main topics. First up, we have making quality data accessible and usable for those who need it. So this is around ensuring patients can access and share their own health information, really promoting that sort of duty to share aspect. The second one is around safeguarding data for against misuse. So this is around ensuring that there are robust mechanisms in place to safeguard health information and that those with access to said information are aware and properly trained for their responsibilities. The third one is advancing and adhering to relevant laws, policies, and ethical standards. So this includes recognizing and respecting First Nations, Inuit, and Métis rights to data sovereignty and self-determination. And it also makes sure that the purpose for accessing health information is legitimate and aligns with both ethical and legal standards. The fourth hallmark is about being transparent about how data is used and shared. So this is really ensuring that there is transparency in the processes and ensuring accountability for information holders and users. So now let's talk about the framework itself in a little bit more detail. So the goal of the overall framework is really to take a holistic approach to data stewardship. So bringing together 9 foundational components needed to create the right conditions for how data is accessed, used, and shared. It's really meant to guide and support users so that they can move forward with stewardship approaches. The 9 components provide a structured way to really understand and strengthen how health data is governed, managed, and used. They act as a comprehensive foundation, addressing both those strategic aspects of stewardship. So like I mentioned, those that are focused more on changing the overall environment and the culture and conditions for data use, and on the operational aspects that are needed to support the effective data stewardship. So those, again, those ensuring proper day-to-day handling of the data. So individually, each component focuses on a specific aspect of that data ecosystem, helping organizations improve areas such as data strategy, data management, or public trust. Together, they form a coordinated and holistic approach, really enabling the creation of the right conditions for data to be shared and used safely, ethically, efficiently, and ultimately for public benefit. So the framework itself is really meant to support and augment, not to replace, established processes, strategies, and programs of work. By understanding and advancing these components, organizations can move from that sort of fragmented or reactive practices towards more mature, aligned, and a trusted data environment, one that really supports better decision-making, improved health outcomes, innovation, and stronger public confidence in how data is used. So I'm going to go into more detail on all of these components, but before I do, I want to talk a little bit about the structure of this framework, or this sort of placemat, as I call it. So you'll notice that the first 7 components sit across the continuum from strategic to operational stewardship, starting with guiding principles and culture, all the way through to data use. The 2 components at the bottom, the First Nations, Inuit, Métis, data governance and sovereignty, and the public trust and engagement components, intentionally span the entire framework. They are not standalone considerations, and they must really be embedded across every aspect of stewardship. I also really want to highlight the fact that the components are interdependent. So progress in one area depends on progress in the others. So for example, strong data management without clear governance or public trust will not enable meaningful data sharing. So it's also important to note that the framework is technology independent. So it focuses on the human, the policy, and the governance foundations that need to be in place in order for those technical solutions to actually succeed. So now in terms of the components themselves, first up, we have the guiding principles and culture. So this one is about the guiding rules that really provide a strong foundation to help inform decisions and steer actions in a rapidly evolving data landscape. It promotes a cultural shift towards data being shared securely and appropriately for individual care and public benefit. Next up, we have legislation, regulations, and agreements. And this is about evolving relevant content to advance consistency in approaches and understanding, to support clear, consistent, and relevant legislation that really works to reduce barriers associated with data sharing. Next is data strategy, and this is about identifying shared data requirements for health system priorities through a comprehensive plan that really outlines how health data will be collected, shared, and used to achieve sort of that common vision and those shared objectives and shared goals. Data governance is around the formalization and enforcement of structures, processes, and rules that really guide those decisions about data, aiming to establish that consistency in data-related activities. Next, we have stewardship skills and literacy, and this is about providing those supports and resources to really help decision makers, stewards, and all those using data to really understand the policies, standards, processes, and tools, and to ensure that they are fully equipped to perform in their roles. Next up is data management. And this one is probably the one that people are most familiar with, but it's around collecting, storing, and sharing data in fair, safe, and efficient ways through several sub-disciplines, such as data standards, data quality, interoperability, data architecture, and so forth. Data use is around ensuring data is fit for purpose for all approved uses, including primary use and the reuse of data. Then we have the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis data governance and sovereignty. And this component helps really ground the work in cultural safety and humility and supports building respectful, meaningful relationships. So this component is really about working to ensure that First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples are engaged through their own representative institutions and are able to determine their needs and preferences in how their respective data will be governed. And last, but certainly not least, we have public trust and engagement. And this is around ensuring that the rules, the policies, and the procedures are really in tune with the needs of the public in order to provide that public benefit. So then within the actual framework document itself, each component has 2 accompanying information cards. So I've included the cards for the stewardship skills and literacy component as an example, but similar ones exist for each of the components. So on this card, you'll find component overviews and impacts, a listing of the key elements required to successfully implement the component, examples that exist across the country that can help inform and guide component advancement, and examples of some of those sort of the bigger barriers or challenges that are associated with each of the stewardship components. On the second card, this is where you'll find sort of those key actions to be taken to enable change and ultimately lead to successful implementation of health data stewardship approaches. The actions are categorized according to the type of action required. So actions related to structure, rules, resources, and people. So for example, the structure action deals with the strategy, the governance, and the decision-making that provide that overall direction, accountability, and oversight. The rule-based actions focus on the rules needed to appropriately capture, process, analyze, and share the health data. The resource actions really deal with the various types of resources that are needed for implementation, things like standards, assets, and other tools. And lastly, the people actions are focused on the people who are involved in data stewardship and the knowledge and the support that's needed to empower them to take a stewardship approach. So in order to support the operationalization and the sort of implementation of the framework, we created a health data stewardship implementation toolkit. So this toolkit, it houses an evolving collection of resources, documents, and tools that are designed to support implementation of the health data stewardship framework. Essentially, the toolkit is designed for organizations, teams, and individuals seeking to understand, assess, and strengthen health data stewardship practices. It's for anyone who's involved in the capture, management, use, and governance of the health data. So users can really use these resources within the toolkit to support operationalization of the framework, to improve data sharing, access, and use, to enable that consistent monitoring of progress over time, and to learn from leading and emerging stewardship-related practices across the health systems. Content within this toolkit will continue to expand as new tools are developed and as best practices evolve in order to continuously support users in their health data stewardship journeys. So the toolkit includes 3 new initial resources. So the first one is the Data Stewardship Self-Assessment Tool. And this is a practical tool to really help organizations assess their current practices, identify strengths and gaps, and prioritize actions across each of the 9 foundational components of health data stewardship. Next, we have the glossary, and this really supports common understanding and consistent use of key stewardship-related terms and concepts. And the third new resource is a Pan-Canadian resource inventory. So this inventory brings together a curated collection of national and international data stewardship resources that support pan-Canadian data access, sharing, and use. It contains links to relevant tools, frameworks, guidance, and examples to help reduce duplication, to break down silos, and to really enable that cross-jurisdictional learning. So in order to sustain progress, HIE has been leading the creation of a pan-Canadian governance model that really fosters collaboration, coordination, transparency, and accountability. So we've been working alongside provinces and territories, First Nations, Inuit and Métis organizations, and other partners to really shape a collaborative way forward, one that builds public trust, reflects shared values, and respects the unique needs of the jurisdictions, the data users, First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. So we really took a Team Canada approach to providing and supporting a wide range of governance functions. So this includes things like strategy, coordination and connection, gathering input and advice and information sharing, decision-making, and oversight and monitoring. So here we have a view of this sort of new functions-based approach to data stewardship governance for Canada. So this structure enables that coordination, that transparency, and accountability without creating an unnecessary burden. So our governance and collaboration model essentially set out the ways of how we're working together so that we can be effective and have more shared but coordinated accountability. So what you see highlighted right here is sort of 4 new groups that report up to existing federal, provincial, and territorial governance committees. But this new governance model does not work in isolation. It's connected to many other important existing committees and groups. I'm not going to speak to any of those other groups now, don't worry. But this image here is really just to show you the interconnectedness of all the different work that's going on across the country. I will, however, dive more into our 4 new groups a little bit. So first, say this works, there we go. First, we have the Data Stewardship Strategic Coordinating Center. So this group, which is led by HIE, will essentially act as a national nerve center for data stewardship. This group will coordinate a coherent pan-Canadian picture of the whole health system that provides that sort of trusted, comparable insights to guide policy, fuel innovation, and really address those pressing challenges. The goal here is really to convene provinces and territories and other interest holders to achieve agreement and advancement on issues of national importance. Next up, we have the Data Stewardship Collaborative. So this group serves as the key forum for building consensus recommendations and advancing solutions that span across jurisdictions and sectors. Next, we have our multi-interest advisory panel. So this panel brings that diverse cross-sector voice to data stewardship to really help shape priorities and provide that sort of equity-centered advice. It includes representation from the public, from clinicians, from communities, and from First Nations, Inuit, and Métis members. And then lastly, we have our task and finish groups. So these are time-limited, expert-driven teams that are convened to develop recommendations, frameworks, and other solutions on priority topics. So to summarize kind of all of that real quickly, the framework and the governance model really work together. They work together to help support the establishment of a common agreed upon agenda for the country. They provide the needed foundation for collaboration and change, and they help fuel better, smarter policy and more equitable health outcomes for everyone in Canada. So now, like I promised, I'm going to ask the same question again. So after hearing all of this, I'll ask you if you're still around, to please raise your virtual hand if you feel you have a better understanding of what health data stewardship is. I feel like that's quite a bit more. So I will take that as a win. Thanks, everybody. So lastly, before I open up the floor to questions, I wanted to highlight a few links for all of you. So if you want to learn any more about any of this work, because I realize there's a lot of content that I just threw at you, please feel free to check out our content on HIE.ca, or you can scan any of the QR codes here to be taken directly to those pages. So we have a QR code for our health data stewardship framework, for our implementation toolkit, and for our governance structure. We also have a couple of webinars that we've put up and that we will continue to create, really to help build understanding. So you can check out that stuff as well by clicking on that or taking a picture of that QR code. And if you have any other questions, you can always email us anytime at datastewardship@kihigh.ca as well. So with that, maybe I will stop there and see if there are any questions.